Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started today. We want to welcome you to our session today on ACE warehousing in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Joining us today is Jim Augenstein and Mark Kepler from Lanham Associates, and we're excited to have such a fantastic turnout today. Before I pass it over to Jim to cover on this topic, I would like to remind you that the session is being recorded and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those into the questions box and we will get them answered for you during our webinar. And so now I will pass it on to Jim to kick off our presentation for today.
Thanks very much, Angie, and thanks for those of you that have joined us on the webinar today. I will get through an introduction to ACE Warehousing and Dynamics 365 Business Central today. And as just to reinforce, please don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm doing the primary speaking, but Mark is there as well to take questions in the question and answer area. And then I'll read them later at the end if there's some that I think are relevant for the group, and I'll go from there. So I do encourage you to ask any questions. And again, thanks for taking the time to take a look at what we're bringing to the market in Business Central. There may be some of you that are not familiar with Lanham, so let me introduce us. We are Lanham Associates. We've been developing solutions inside Microsoft Dynamics NAV and Business Central for 22 plus years, and our solutions extend 100% into the supply chain area. We are the best single source for supply chain solutions and services in the Dynamics NAV Business Central space. The products you see listed here, some of you are familiar with us. I know I've talked with you in the past, and some of you might be new, but the products that we bring to the market are listed here. Now, in the Business Central world, we talk about having an important element of Business Central and the new extension methodology that has been introduced to develop products. We think it's important to have solutions that are available from one vendor. The question of how they will, the different products will talk to one another in the future is still very much a to be determined kind of environment. And so we are excited that we have the solutions that you need for your customers, and for those of you that are joining us from Innovia, and for you customers that are end users looking at our solutions today for Business Central from one vendor that seamlessly talk to one another. So following along the blue lines on the top, obviously EDI is one of our marquee products, and the EDI solutions extend across the various functional areas that we need. If you're a distributor, you obviously sales, purchasing, and warehousing are very key elements for you, and there's a support in there for you for EDI as well as for 3PL warehouses if you're communicating with 3PL warehouses, which I know in particular I've talked with some Innovia customers before that are using 3PLs, and to be able to have that seamlessly integrated into NAV is crucial. On the shipping side, eShip is our shipping solution that manages and all of the packing and shipping operations, tightly coupled into Business Central and coupled into EDI as well, so that we're not doing any duplicate data entry. All the data that we need is captured. Of course, ACE Warehousing is the topic of today's conversation, as well as outbound warehouse requests. More of that in just a second. And then following down the left-hand side, inbound container tracking, along with receiving with eReceive for you non-mobile users, all crucial elements and products that we bring to the table. So for you that are shipping and working with boxes, the solution from one vendor we think is really going to be important, particularly in the short run as Business Central evolves. Now, today's topic is focused on two areas: ACE Warehousing in Business Central and outbound warehouse request, which is a subset of or a standalone part of ACE Warehousing. A few years ago, we introduced outbound warehouse request as a standalone set of objects. For those of you that have been in the Dynamics channel for a while or space for a while, you understand what I mean by objects. And it was introduced in a standalone way. It's a very powerful tool. And ACE Warehousing in Business Central is something that we're discussing today. That is the mobile enablement of a warehouse. So those are the two focuses of today, how they work together. And I've kind of subtitled the presentation today as Simplified Warehouse Processing in Microsoft's Dynamics 365 Business Central. That's a mouthful, with Lanham. And so there's some new things to talk about, as well as some enhanced features to the product that's been around for a while. But that's the focus of today. So first of all, let's talk about outbound warehouse requests for just a moment. Outbound warehouse request, what is it? It really is the centralized location to manage the outbound order process. The question of what to ship, who to ship, and so on, there really is no place inside BaseNav to answer the kinds of questions that we typically need to answer about those outbound activities. And outbound warehouse request was, I think it's 15 or 16 years old now, was created back then and to help solve that problem. And we'll obviously take a very close look at it today. What is relatively new is, and this is the outbound warehouse request screen as a slide, of course, inside Business Central. So if you are a current outbound warehouse request user and have not looked at it before in Business Central, this is what it looks like. If you are new to Business Central, this also is what it looks like in the new modern client user interface. All distributors really face the same questions, regardless of your size and your package or shipping volume. The question is, what do I need to ship today? Do I have enough inventory to ship a particular order or a group of orders today? Do I need to prioritize customers and address those customers first today? And when it comes to the workflow associated with those activities, help me assign the work to individuals or even to groups, and to be able to manage my workflow in that manner. And if I'm using different elements of warehousing inside Nav, help me replenish my pick areas quickly and based only on what I need to replenish based on actual demand. And there's more, but these are the primary things that we're trying to address with outbound warehouse requests. Now, with ACE Warehousing is our wireless mobile enablement of the warehouse, right? So the first bit of functionality that ACE Warehousing brings is simply wireless warehouse device support. But we go further than that. I think the phrase that I've kind of related to lately is more than mobile. There are other solutions out there, of course, but they tend to be just mobile solutions. They've taken the standard Nav business process and extended it to a handheld device, but they really haven't looked closely at the warehouse like we've done to enhance the basic Business Central Nav WMS functionality with little things or big things, and we'll discuss some of those today. Of course, it streamlines the warehouse workflow, and because it's Lanham, it's tightly coupled and integrated with other Lanham products also designed to streamline the workflow there. So those are the two topics. Those are the two functional areas that we're discussing today. Again, for those of you that are longtime Lanham folks, you may know or have seen this before. What's new, of course, is things about Business Central. And for those of you that are new to Business Central and perhaps new to Lanham, those are the two functional areas that of interest today. Of course, there's a lot more that we could cover, but never in just a short 55 minutes. So what I want to do first is talk about outbound warehouse requests, but we're going to do it inside the product. So let me transition just a second to outbound warehouse requests inside Business Central here, and we'll go here. I may have to log back in. Yeah, I talked too long and I've been logged out, so give me just a moment. And I want to change my role center. In my demo world, I regularly have to assume different personas. And so I'm going to change to a different role center here, and we will go in as the outbound warehouse request manager. Those of you that have not seen Business Central and the Lanham pieces yet so far, you'll note as we go through here, of course, this is an opportunity for us to recreate, in many cases, the role centers or other kinds of elements of the user interface. If you've not seen any Business Central demos from Lanham yet, you'll note a few things. You'll probably know that inside Business Central, at least through the fall release, through the spring release, the menuing options that we all had in older versions were no longer there. So we have our own Lanham menu here that I can drill down into, I'd say somewhat similar to the old departments menu if you're a longtime user, so we can get to screens. Of course, the search bar up here is where we go to try and find things if you know what you're looking for. That's what we all tend to use now to find different screens. But the Lanham menu has its own options now to drill down and around. So the outbound warehouse request role center was designed to give us a view of all the things in these tiles that we need and some metrics around them. If I change to the warehouse manager screen, there's some additional, which I will do, you'll see some additional tiles down here which give us some current metrics of number of picks per hour and that sort of thing. We'll look at those. But for now, I want to go into outbound warehouse requests, and you'll see some new things. First of all, when on the development side, we tried to streamline and simplify some of the screens and where you interact. The outbound pick request is the screen that I'm going to work from, which is the simplified view of our shipping solution. And I actually wanted to cover one slide before I did that, and that is here. I wanted to define what the pick request is. The pick request is a new document, and this is released actually with NAV 2018, but now it's extended into Business Central as well. But the pick request is that environment for those of you that are in a very simplified NAV location setup. So if you're familiar with the NAV demo databases, this would be the blue location where we have no bins, we have no advanced warehouse functionality, but yet we still need to be able to perhaps print and produce a document that is can go out to the warehouse on what to pick. And so the outbound warehouse request pick request is that document. This obviously is the Business Central screen view of it, but if you wanted a printed report, there is a printed report that goes along with that. Now the pick request, the details about the pick request are this. First of all, the pick request can be or is employed in any Business Central warehouse configuration where we're not using anything advanced. In other words, no checkboxes in the require shipment, require pick location settings. It is really just a very basic pick document that's designed to tell someone where to go to get something and what to pick. If you're using bins, it'll have the bin number. If you're using no bins, it'll have the shelf number if you're using shelves. It is a way to allocate inventory to orders. So I can see even in the simple location that I'm consuming inventory associated with orders, so I know where I stand on my position there. It will be eventually possible to automatically create the pick when I release the order. That didn't quite make the cut, it's on the slide, but that'll be something that'll be added in the future. In addition, because of the changes that are being made with ACE warehousing in Business Central, it is possible now to pick on a handheld device, even in this very simple location, and I have more about that. So those are the important points to know about the pick request. Now let's go into NAV and show you how that works. So the outbound pick request here, it's a simplified view of the outbound warehouse request screen. If you are familiar with outbound warehouse requests, then this is a bit more simplified because there's some things that aren't that are not supported in this simple environment that we do have in the full version of Outbound Warehouse Request. So we've got a simpler screen with a little bit less real estate taken up in order to operate with. Now, so what are we doing with this? We're filtering our outbound activity to know, as I said, what should I ship? Do I have prioritizations? Do I have EDI orders? Do I have FedEx overnights that I need to accomplish first? And so on and so on. So there's any number of possibilities here that we want to filter and view our information. And in order to facilitate that, we have this here screen, or this box lookup into predefined filters that you can create in order to filter your outbound workflow. For example, I've created one here. It's called blue. It's in my blue location, and I'm looking only at sales orders. Well, before I select that filter, you can see down here I've got some activity which is green. I've got some activities which are transfers. When I choose that filter, now my list is filtered only for my blue location and only for sales orders. Now, essentially anything that's on the header, and we'll edit this. Essentially anything that's on the header of the sales order is something that you can apply filters to. So you can see here that obviously I'm filtering by my blue location. I've chosen just my sales orders, what statuses of the various documents, and so on. So the basic information that lives on the sales order header is what we have. There is one exception to that, and that's the line dates. If you are taking different ship dates at the line level, then when it comes time to creating this pick request, we will honor the line dates if we put in a filter. So the standard nav filter, so if I were to say, ... 7 days, it will look out into, or not ... but just 7 days, it will look out 7 days into the future and create, when we create the pick request, it'll create only for that for those line items that are supposed to ship within 7 days from the work date today. So that's the only thing that we're looking at the sales order line level. The rest of this information all comes from the sales header. There are ways to print here and so on. If I'm printing documents, there's information about which print queue to print from and so on. That's more of a detail that I'm not going to go into today, but there is support for that. And I do want to talk about here, and this is grouping things together or in batches. So it is very possible in this. I see this a lot in the e-commerce type solutions, where you've got a lot of orders, but not necessarily a lot of items on the order. Well, when I create picks, I may not want to have one pick, one person grabs one piece of paper, goes out, picks it, takes it to shipping, and then grabs another piece of paper. And I may want to batch this activity up into a various size. And I might have 150 orders or more that I'm looking at a given time, and I want to group this in groups of 5. So if I've got that kind of capability where I can filter my orders first for the smaller orders, maybe you've got a different number series for EDI orders versus e-commerce type orders, then I can say I want to print 5 of those at a time. So we'll batch those up into a group of 5, and if I select all 150 orders, it will create a pick request in using 5 orders at a time into one pick request, and so on. So it's a way of grouping and batching the activity. There's also the possibility of creating what we call a combined pick, and a combined pick is slightly different than a batch size, but the combined pick works with our ACE warehousing. So if you're not using wireless devices and you want to batch them, then you're looking at the warehouse activity group size here. So if I were to put in a 5, for example, and when I selected my orders, then it will batch them into groups of 5. We know, of course, that the most inefficient or expensive transaction in the warehouse is walking. And so when it's possible, when it makes sense to combine them, let's do that so that we're being more efficient when it comes to shipping. Obviously, on a large transfer, if you're filling a full truck or a large LTL order, something like that, it might make sense for one person to work on that. I think it works well in a variety of different circumstances. But you have that ability to group them. So these filters then are predefined, and then you can use them over and over again. So for example, if I wanted to have one where only my shipment method shipping agent, for example, was postal service. If for some reason my postal orders are one that I wanted to create, then I would just choose that U.S. Postal, and then when I applied that filter here at the opening screen, then my orders would be filtered accordingly. So that's the first kind of broad swath of activity that we do inside outbound warehouse requests. In this, again, we're looking at the pick request functionality. The other possibility is to assign picking priorities. So if I had, for example, the postal order was more important than the UPS orders for whatever reason, I can assign that a picking priority, and then when I create the picks, there's a different method that we would create the picks by establishing that, or by using the picking priority, and so the picks would get created in that priority order. We go from highest to lowest. So if in the case of scarce inventory, if I want to make sure that this customer gets the inventory first, then I would create that with a higher priority, and then if I run out, then the picks won't get created. That's the other thing about the create pick process, which is crucial. It is iterative. So if I highlight, as I said before, 150 orders, and if I run out of inventory, and if you have a circumstance where your shipping advice is set to complete, the pick will not create. If your customer allows partials, then of course the pick would create, the pick request would create because the customer allows partials. But we will honor that information on the shipping advice information that comes from the sales order. That of course assumes that I'm using the shipping advice in the shipping advice handling. It is possible to override that if I don't want to use that shipping advice, but there are multiple possibilities in many of the fields here to define the workflow. But I have mine set to use with the shipping advice as well. And since we're talking about pick requests, then you can see here whether the pick request exists or not. Now, I've hidden the fact boxes over here on the right-hand side. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go here. The fact boxes, because the fact boxes gives us information as well. If you are looking through and kind of making decisions on an order-by-order basis, then you can see over here what the status is. So in this case, this order can be shipped complete. If I go up to this order, I can only partially ship this one because I'm missing some inventory apparently. Now, let's talk about the location settings. This, again, is my blue location, which in the Cronus database has no warehousing whatsoever. So we're not looking at bins, we're doing none of that. And so the inventory that is available is looking at all the inventory that's in that particular location. So on this order, I must have something which is completely out of stock because I can only partly ship that. And there's two ways I can look at that information if I'm doing this in an order-by-order basis. I can see down here in this statistics area that I have a quantity of 5 somethings on this order, but I only have 2 available. And if I want to take a look and see exactly what that looks like, I can look here and I can see just the basics about the items. There we go. That I need for this order. So I can see I've got the glass door and the shelf, quantity 2, quantity 3, and that's what I'm missing. I'm missing this shelf. Now, in this case, this customer is a ship complete customer. So when I go to create the pick request, I would expect that this would not get created, and that is in fact the case. Now, I've only got 4 orders here, and that's pretty easy. But there is another view of this that I would, or another possibility, and that relates to something that we call action entries. Now, the action entries are, and let me put my filter, my blue on this again. The action entries seek to answer the question about inventory and what I can ship and not ship based on the inventory that I have in my warehouse. All right, and action entries help do that heavy lifting for me. And we get to those here, action entries, and you can see there's a list here. And as I hover over, of course, you'll see tooltips and those kinds of things in the Business Central environment. And this defines what's going to happen if I were to choose that action entry. So the basic workflow could be something like this. let's say, for example, I'm in an EDI environment and I want to filter first for my EDI orders. Well, I would have a filter code for EDI orders. And I don't know if that column is exposed here. I think it is. Just a second. Let me get rid of this. No. All right. So let's add that column in here. There it is, EDI order. All right, so now if I had any EDI orders in here, I would filter for those, and that would be the first filter on my list. And then I would say, okay, I've got my EDI orders. Now where do I stand from an inventory position on these orders? And again, I only have 4 here, but if I had more than I could literally see in my number of rows here, then I would choose under actions. I would go action entries, and let's just show me all the orders where all the inventory is available. Now we already know this one is not. Right, so I can see, wait a minute, this one has an issue. So your workflow might be grab your EDI orders, then filter for, run the action code for all available, filter for my all available orders only, and then go and create pick. Now, if I'm using a batch picking strategy, something like that, it would honor those as well. So what that gives me is workers getting started right away, working on activity in the warehouse, and now I can go in and I can look at my ones that didn't make the cut and figure out what I need to do. Maybe I've got something that's in production and it's coming out today, and I can find that out, and I'll be able to ship that order today. That kind of thing. Any number of possibilities. Maybe I've got some inventory in receiving, or I know that that's coming in, and I could drill into that information. So it just helps me to determine whether I can pick or not pick. And then in that example, if I wanted to say, okay, I know I've got inventory coming out of production, even though this says don't create the pick, because it says I don't have enough inventory, I can change this and I can say ignore it. I could go up here and say ignore, and now I'll still create the pick. So how you interact with this screen, there are just myriad possibilities, but I hope that you can see that there's really nothing like this inside Nav, hasn't been, to help define and create that workflow. Now here's the kind of the big thing. In the past, all this functionality was available only for customers that were in a full advanced warehouse environment. So I'm using Nav Advanced Warehousing with directed put away and pick turned on. I've got bins, I've got bin types, and so on. And all that is still here, of course, but now we can work in a very simple environment. I've been so excited to have this available for a less sophisticated, complex environment from a warehousing perspective, because I've been there. At one point I was in the industry, and I would have loved to have something like this to at least get the warehouse working rather than have to go through and look at things manually over and over again. And then, so this solves that problem for those of you that are not using any kind of location settings whatsoever. Okay, so let's look at what one of the pick requests looks like. I'm going to grab these. Well, we'll just grab all 4 orders, and we'll create the picks. All right. Now, obviously, we only got 3 pick requests, as we would expect, because this one was not. We don't have enough inventory available. Actually, oops, I didn't want to close it down. I apologize. I'm still learning the navigation in Modern Client, and I forget to close the right X. Let's go back to blue here and close this one. So now you can see I've got pick requests that exist for those 3 orders. And if I go back up here to navigate and request and go look at the pick for that individual order, you can see the individual pick. Now, bin code is exposed here, but I don't have bin codes, but we do get the shelf number. And if I'm printing these pick requests to a warehouse printer, then it would have printed, and I'll print preview. Obviously, it doesn't show you if I print to my printer here at the home environment. When I print preview, then you'll see what the pick request looks like. So what you can do is just print them all at the warehouse. Someone grabs them and off they go. Picks the order and moves on to grab the next one. Now, we did not batch these, so we do get an individual pick request for each order because I did not batch them. So if I go down and look at this one, you can see it's number 4, and this one is number 5. All right. So that's what the pick request looks like from a user perspective. There are of course other functions and so on that exist for this, but I've got to move on into the other conversation around warehousing. All right. Let me take a quick look for questions here. Okay, nothing so far, so we'll move on. If you think of a question for Outbound Warehouse Request, pick request, please ask. Now, for non-Business Central, for NAV users for 2018, this does exist as a separate object set, so it can be installed in a separate object set. The pick request and the standalone Outbound Warehouse Request is backward compatible to NAV 2018, so you can take full advantage of this in a non-wireless warehousing environment. All right. Now, I do want to reuse these, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to delete those pick requests because I want to use it in the handheld conversation in just a minute. So let me go here, actions and functions, delete. And by the way, with the pick request, if you are paper-based and you print, then someone does need to come to the client, log in, and complete the pick request if necessary. You can start over again on the pick request. You can delete it if you get to the shelf and there's no inventory for whatever reason. I mean, you have some interactivity inside the NAV client with that pick request, and in anticipation of can this be extended to a tablet? My answer would be yes. Just like anything in Business Central now, you could use this on a tablet. Of course, those tablets do require a full user license, so I don't know about the economics of that conversation. But yeah, it could be done on a tablet. But it could also, of course, be extended to mobile devices as well. Okay, so that's pick request. We're going to interact with this a little bit more in the next topic, but I need to go back to slides for just a second. Okay, so this grid, and oh, by the way, if anyone is interested in having the slides, please feel free to email me and I'll send them to you. My email address will be at the end of the meeting today. So just a very simple list of functions here for pick requests with bins and pick requests without bins. You can see really there's only one difference, and that's replenishment activities. For those of you for which that might be a new term, replenishment in various settings of location has different meanings. If I'm using full advanced warehousing, that it essentially means that I may have bulk storage bins that are identified as such and pickable bins also identified as such. I need to get inventory from bulk down to pickable bins. That's one thing. Or with a bin, I can identify that I would have different units of measure perhaps for inventory if I'm using pick request with bins, and I could create replenishment activity. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Replenishment activity for just that simplified environment from Outbound Warehouse Request. So that's basically the only function which is different between the two options. Wave pick and extra pick are two advanced picking strategies that we've built into Outbound Warehouse Request, and that requires the use of different bin types. So those are not supported in this environment, and zones are also an advanced warehouse configuration, and so it's not supported with pick requests as well. But everything else here is fully supported. Okay, on to ACE warehousing in Business Central. So what is ACE warehousing? As a refresher, ACE warehousing is the brand name for our wireless warehousing, which generally also includes Outbound Warehouse Requests. Really, most customers implement outbound warehouse requests when they use our warehousing as well. And so it is all referred to as one suite, although outbound warehouse requests can stand alone. So ACE Warehousing and Business Central. I have to go to the past for just a moment. ACE Warehousing was our mobile enablement of a NAV advanced warehouse. And by that I mean that directed put away and pick on the location page was checked. And when that gets checked, you can see that the other checkboxes here are enabled and also grayed out. By default, that checks them. And at that time, in ADCS, which is Automatic Data Collection Systems, was the set of tools that Microsoft created for us to extend NAV out into those into mobile devices in that environment. So that was the past. Now moving forward, in Business Central, ADCS has not been repeated from Microsoft, and as far as we know, there are no plans to it. Their answer is to seek an ISV solution or to talk to your partner about using Power Apps. That's what they post on their on the MSDN site for NAV. And so that gave us an opportunity to create our own environment that extends Business Central onto devices, and we could take away the requirement of having directed put away and pick. So from Lanham now, we are telling you that any location configuration, including nothing, is now fully supported inside Business Central with our wireless devices. And so that's the big news when it comes to Business Central. So that means for picking, no bins, yes. Inventory pick, yes. Warehouse pick, yes. Directed put away and pick, yes. All those configurations are now supported. Do you need to take inventory? We can support you with either the physical inventory journal or the warehouse physical inventory journal if you're using advanced warehousing. When it comes to receiving, can I do item tracking on the handheld device in blue? The answer is yes. Do I support multiple units of measure and license plating? The answers there are also yes, in any configuration that exists inside Business Central. So for me, this is huge. It's always been kind of, as the sales guy here, this has always been a limitation for me in the past, but now I don't have that limitation any longer. Any configuration that you want to use, I can use. But as I said, it's more than mobile, right? So there are, as I said before, there's some solutions out there that are mobile, and they have a pretty interface and they do the basic nav stuff, but they have not gone into the depth that we have gone to support things like item tracking, multiple units of measure, license plating, and so on in the very basic environment. And we have. So that's kind of the picking side. Now, we've already talked about outbound warehouse requests. The other element of the of our ACE warehousing wireless solution is what we call dynamic. The dynamic means to us that we create the activity on the device and we execute that activity. So if I'm doing movements, if I'm doing putaways, or if I'm counting, I want to be able to use the device to create it and execute it. And again, that depending on which degree of warehousing that you're using, determines which activity you're actually going to take advantage of. But we believe it's important to be able to have someone right there at the spot to be able to create and execute. And we've added in the ability, or we've continued to have the ability to do that dynamic activity. Bin counting is a module that exists. Now, this one, unfortunately, is just for directed put away and pick environments. It's not extended down into the basic level. But to do for bin count, that's not right. That's those bullets are, I must have grabbed the wrong slide. Bin count is a set of functionality which allows us to count in a better way than what base nav supports. The best way to count your inventory is by an area, a group of aisles, an aisle, a set of bins, something like that. And that just doesn't work all that well inside base nav. And so bin counting is a module that we've added to allow us to manage that counting process better. It's not for today's topic. if you're interested in that, we can talk about that at a later time. And then, of course, replenishment, I mentioned earlier, depending upon your degree of warehousing, bin replenishment, fundamentally inside BaseNav, doesn't look at whether I need the outbound activity or the outbound material. It looks at everything. So my only filter really is a range of bins, but really it makes sense to replenish inventory that's actually needed for outbound sales orders. Yes, does it make sense on a routine basis to replenish all your pick bins when they're below their minimum? Of course, but mostly you want to do it for actual inventory, and so our replenishment kind of replaces the standard nav replenishment. So that's ACE Warehousing. That's in Business Central, and we'll take a look at it and do some activity now. The context that I want to do it today, though, is in a blue location. I want you to see some of the activity on the blue location. So what we'll do is we'll change over to the device, and I'll connect. So the menuing and so on still has the character-based look and feel. That is something that we believe in, and we essentially duplicated what was Microsoft ADCS, but with our own code and our own environment. So we call them session pages and so on inside Nav as opposed to mini forms, but the end result is the look and the feel remains the same. It's still character-based. There's a nice broad support for multiple languages as well. If you need secondary languages, there's support in there. And I will tell you, for you that are familiar with ACE Warehousing from the past or presentations, the setup has been streamlined, and Mark took this opportunity to really refine things to make it easier to set up and administer, as well as added in some new nice functionality. For example, I'll show you something really simple here. Here I have, I'm logged into my device, Jim. I'm in my blue location. You can see my menu. Well, if I wanted to change to a different location, I can do that. I'm going to choose option number 6. This may want me to log back in because, yeah, okay, so let me log back in for a second. So I'm logging back in, and now I'm going to choose option number 6, and I'm going to change my location, and I want to work in a different location. Many of you have different locations, so now it's nice and easy to make a change to, and I'm going to go into, let's just say, my gold location. Now I log in my gold location, you'll note that my initial menu looks a little different. It says pick instead of pick request and so on. So having dynamic menus based on your login is something that's new, and it's easily maintained inside because we've got more control over the way this whole solution operates. But I am going to stay in blue because that's where I've got my activity entered for today. So we'll go back to change location, which is 2 here, and go back to option number 1. All right, so that's blue. So I'm going to start with receiving, and that's option number 4. And I've got purchase orders that I want to receive. Now you'll see here there's this function number 4, scan order. It's been there all along. It was just kind of hidden down in the lower menu, but now if I've got a purchase order that I want to begin receiving, I can just choose that option, and then I scan the purchase order number that I have, if there's the number on the packing slip from the vendor, and now I can begin. Now I want you to see the first field that we stopped at, and that was LP, or license plate number. If you are in that blue location, and if you still want to use license plates, then you can turn that on. It's just a checkbox to enable it. And so I'm going to receive that my inventory, but first I'm going to put it on a license plate. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with what a license plate is, it's a barcode that exists on a pallet that allows me to have items associated with it, and I can then move things around and do things with that license plate by scanning. In many cases, it's a more efficient way than scanning individual items, particularly if you're using lot numbers. I can scan a lot number, an item and a lot number associated with the license plate, and if I do things with that, I've got that. Even in the blue location, you may want to store things on pallets so you can see what's on the pallets, and so license plate is the first field. There's also possible to have that sequence created for you and print a label, In this case, I'm accepting one that came from my vendor, and then I scan an item number and indicate how many is on that particular pallet. We'll say 25. And then when I'm done with that activity, I can start a new one, all right? And I could do another license plate, and same thing, we'll put a different item number on there, and we'll also put 25. And like before, when I'm done with an activity, I hit my F3 key and I register my document. Before I register, I want you to see some of the choices there. I can print labels, I can print an LP label, I can insert a new line to add items to a purchase order or to the license plate if I forgot something. So there's some new functions here that, for those of you that have seen this before, again, that have been added into the application. I'm going to say it again, more than mobile, right? We're not just doing simple things on a device. We're actually thinking about the way you need to work in your warehouse. So we'll go ahead and register that, and now that purchase order receipt gets processed, and now we have inventory that has been received. Now, of course, in blue, I'm not doing anything with it. Because they don't have bins or that kind of thing. But if I were to go into Business Central now, let's go back to my main menu. And in my license plate position list, now you can see I've got 2 pallets in blue, and I can go and look at the contents of those pallets if I want to, so I can see by pallet number what is on those individual pallets. If I'd captured a variant, if I'd captured a lot number, then I can see that that's there. So if you are by chance a distributor that accepts a pallet and then transships it, you could use that license plate in other processes as well. So it's there for blue if you want it. If you don't want to use license plate, that's fine. I would just turn that off, and I'll show you a new setup area so you can see what that looks like. It's my RF location list, and in my RF LOC is RF location. Yeah, there we go. RF location setup list. This is kind of an illustration of how we've simplified the setup. And I'll just turn off license plate. And so now I don't have license plate enabled if I'm not going to be using that. So all I would do is receive against the purchase order the quantities that I'm receiving, and then of course it posts just like in the past. So that's what receiving looks like on the blue location. So for those of you that may have seen my demos before, never had a chance to work in blue, but now we can. I do want to show you one other thing here so I don't lose track. Sorry, I have to log in and log out to change. If I don't stay in that session long enough, I lose my session. So let me just show you one thing here. As far as administration is concerned, Mark's written in some nice things to make administration easier. The device connection log will give us certain information. The one that I think is interesting is the most interesting is the device trace log, and this will show me the documents at the XML level of. This is the one that I had open. This is me now. So I can show my inbound document. So for troubleshooting, this is something that's really beneficial for troubleshooting. I can show my outbound, so I can see the XML of what's coming from each activity, and if I need to do some troubleshooting issues, and I can save this as a file. So it's really very useful to look and see exactly what's being communicated from the device to the database and so on. I can also emulate the device now inside Nav with the emulator tool. that allows me to mimic what's happening on a device. So if I need to troubleshoot something that a user is doing, I can go right in with the emulator and emulate that particular activity. So very useful features added into administration for the individual devices as well. Okay, so let's go back to outbound warehouse request, pick request. We'll grab our blue all again. And I want to talk about the combined pick and its integration to eShip. Show more, yes, and this one. Now we know that we can create picks for these three because we have enough inventory. This one we still have a deficiency on, so I'm not going to do that. But earlier I went up here and did a create pick, but here is what we call the combined pick. Now the combined pick, as I said, works nicely for those e-commerce orders where I want to generate activity, pick request activity for multiple orders at a time, so that one worker is working on 5 or 6 orders, whatever that number makes sense to you. So here I'm just going to say create combined pick, and when I do that, we'll get one pick request for all 3 picks. So we can see here, this is pick request number 6 for that order. This is also pick request number 6 for that order, and this is pick request number 6 for that order. All right. So now I've got one pick request for those 3 orders. Now let's go see how that manifests over on the device. So I'll escape up here, and we'll go into pick requests. And we'll start off by scanning my pick request. I believe that was number 6. Oops, I'm sorry. I have to choose option number 3 first. I wanted to talk about the option number 4, which is called Get Work. Get Work is a very nice feature for making sure that everyone in the warehouse stays occupied. You can never say, I don't have anything to do. If you're assigned for picking and all of a sudden you don't have any picks, if there's other activity that needs to be done, perhaps movements or counts, then the Get Work function is what I can use to do that. There's some setup that prioritize, hey, if I'm not in my primary duties, what are my secondary, and determines. But you never have a reason to say, I've got nothing to do. So if I do the Get Work function and then hit F1, then in this case, it's taking me right into that pick request to pick. I don't have to pick it. I don't have to choose it. It just says, hey, grab the next document and get to work. So there's never a reason as a worker to say, I have nothing to do. Right now, I don't want to work on that one right now. I just wanted you to see the Get Work function. Let's go back to this. And we'll do the option number 3. So the concept is maybe I do have a paper-based pick ticket that I'm going to use. Maybe there's pick instructions that I still want. And so I've got that, I scan, and then I begin to pick my order. But I want you to see here is shelf number. So we're using shelf numbers in this environment. Blue doesn't have bins. So we just begin to scan part numbers on the order. And of course, I did not, there it is, that barcode. I couldn't see my barcode there. So I scanned the part number. Let's try it again, get the right one. Okay. Now, here is where eShip and Ace Warehousing, even in blue, work together seamlessly. This tote number field is how I keep track of which order I have that I'm picking so that when it comes to eShip, I can keep them separate. So maybe you're picking into a tote, I'm picking into a box, something like that. Note the reference number. I'm still on the same order number there. And I'm assuming that I'm going to go and put those into the same tote. Even if I don't have a tote, and I just want to use a barcode to put it on the cardboard box, just so I know which order I'm working in. So now I move on to my next item, 7002, and I forgot to put a barcode on that one, 70002. Note the tote number field is blank, so now I'm going to assign that order to its own tote number, quantity of 3. Okay, I'm on the same order number, 70040, and I will do the same number. So you can see the workflow here as I'm going through, displaying me different order numbers, 70100 and same order. And quantity 2. And now a new order, no tote number. We'll scan that number, and we'll put it into its own tote, quantity of 1. And the last one here, got the wrong barcode. Oh, that's a 74. I printed the wrong barcode. So 70102. And quantity 7. Last item is a lot tracked item. So we're going to scan the lot number, or the part number that is a lot number, and the same tote. It's going to go in the same, maybe it's on the same pallet. The tote could be a pallet, and quantity of 2. And note now that it's asking me for my lot number, which is 91001, right? So even in your in the blue location, I can still use lot numbers. Okay, I've got 4 minutes left. I'm going to F3 and register this. Okay, so blue location using warehousing, and now how does that all tie into eShip? I'm going to open up Packline Scanning here real quick. Packline Scanning. And now when I'm here in Packline Scanning, in the past, of course, we started with an order number, or I can use a tote number. When I scan the tote number, it retrieves my information. So now I can pack and ship this order. It's also possible to use eShip in a variety of ways, where all I do is scan that tote number and then just say close package print, right? So today's not necessarily an eShip conversation, but I wanted you to see how that can be leveraged so that you can use that tote number. Now, if those tote numbers don't resonate with you, that's fine. Paper-based pick ticket has the pick request number. I scan that and then scan the items. I take that to eShip, and then eShip, I would use the order number in eShip to go ahead and pack and ship the order. So that's how this all works, kind of seamlessly together. I knew I was going to cut close on time. Let me take a look at any questions. Okay, why doesn't that pull that panel out? Okay, so as far as I can't seem to make my panel larger. Bob, I see you asked a question about lots and serial numbers. The answer is yes. I think I answered that question. Outbound warehouse requests will work with lot and serial numbers in any environment that you have, all the way from blue with no bin tracking, all the way up to advanced warehousing with direct to put away and pick, where we can use lot and or serial numbers. As to devices, do I need to buy new devices if you are already a current user? The answer to that is no, although there are some issues with Android. So, you know, Windows Mobile is coming out, or is going away, and so the devices are going to eventually move over to Android. We do currently support those. The question is, does your device support Android? I'm using a CK71 today, and my CK71 does not support Android. It's still running on Windows Mobile and probably be fine for a while, but the support is going away for that. The CK65 is an Android device that we are testing and working just fine with. So the Android is going to be fine. And then, oh yeah, graphical user interface. I get that question all the time. Yes, when Mark created the solution, he wrote in some hooks that will potentially allow us to move to a graphical user interface at some point, and we're looking at some possibilities. So yes, there will be at some point something graphical from us. I can't put any fences or time frame around that. We're still obviously a big fan of text. Text has a lot of advantages, but we do recognize that some of you guys want to see something in a more graphical user interface. So I can just tell you that we're evaluating some possibilities, and to stay tuned for that particular answer. So okay, I'm right at the top of the hour. Of course, There's myriad more things that I could cover. The important takeaways for today, from my perspective, is that we are in Business Central with ACE Warehousing with all sorts of new possibilities, depending on your location configuration. We truly are more than mobile. We've thought about the way warehouses need to work, and there are lots of things that we've added. And if you are interested in exploring this in more detail, please reach out. My email address is here, and I will be happy to explore this further. For you Innovia folks that are consultants, and if you would like to schedule a session to drill down more deeply into this, please let me know, and we can get something on the calendar as well. Once again, thanks for the time. Angie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I don't have any more questions in the panel.
All right, thank you, Jim. And thank you for everyone on the call today. And if you're watching on demand, we thank you for joining us. We do have a few more webinars coming soon. Actually, this week, we have one left before the holiday. We have Rick Faulkner from Innovia Consulting, and he's going to be presenting on an overview on designing custom word layouts. So check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And if you haven't heard of our podcast already, it's called the Innovia Conversation. You can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out the selection and subscribe so you'll get notified when the new episodes air. All right, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Jim and Mark from Lanham, for presenting today. We look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar. Have a great day, everyone.